Good evening, everyone. We got a full house tonight. We got me, Seven Man, Plutarch, and our guests John and Tom with the Family Government Institute. You guys want to tell us anything briefly about what you guys do?
Uh,
John, you want to take that?
well, we're just trying to establish the Family Government Institute. We have a lot of things in place, but I'm waiting for the IRS to respond to change. And once I get that going, we'll be ready to start building a website and that sort of thing and getting money.
All right.
So I
So,
have a couple of questions, just background. So you guys
Yeah.
are Christians and approaching this from a Christian standpoint, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. So on our channel, Nick is Orthodox Presbyterian, Plutarch is Presbyterian, I am Catholic, and so we kind of go back and forth. We see things from a different standpoint. So, what religious perspective do you guys come from?
I grew up Lutheran,
Okay. I
and I
yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
well, I just grew up Lutheran, and like every college kid in America, you don't return to the church, but you find your way through
Sure.
life, and eventually you meet the devil himself, and you decide, maybe it's time to review things and examine. And I found God through the law, studying the law.
Okay. How about you, Tom?
Well, my family attended Methodist church, but we weren't regular attenders. And my father was pretty much hmm, not religious until his final
Okay.
days. And so I didn't really attend church much. I'd go on the holidays and things like that. But once I got
The,
kind of
the reason I asked that is not to test out whether you're genuine or not. Just every, call it denomination or Catholic versus Protestant, we each have different terminologies and a different language and different definitions. So that helps me to know what definitions they're using because I grew up evangelical and then became Catholic. So I can kind of understand both languages and the definitions. And I find that a lot of the disagreements between different Christians come because they're speaking different languages or they have different definitions for words. And there's really no meaningful, real disagreements. But man, can things get heated?
well, that same principle applies to civil law. Certain terms have different meanings depending on the context in which they're used. And if you don't understand the original or the origin of the terms being used, it's easy to be misdirected into reaching a conclusion that's wrong about what the law actually says. And
also the law, even interpreting the law, those who use the law play word games.
I'm sorry, you kind of muffled a little bit.
Yeah,
Nick, you're cutting out some.
Okay, so those who use the law, those who study the law and make laws, uh, whether intentional or unintentional, they end up playing word games.
Right. Lawyers are wordsmiths, primarily. What we, okay, how do I explain this? I probably have to start with the Flint case. We always come back to that when John and I are talking the law and the problems with so-called family law. Because right there is one of those words that nobody truly understands what family law means or what family law is. And because Family law, well, we can pull up a slide on that just so we can
Okay,
discuss
which
that.
one? The
We need
this one?
the bubble
No.
one. That's the family law. The one next to that.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Oh, here it is. The merging of private domestic relations law with public child welfare law. The merging of them becomes family law.
Well, not the merging, it's the blending. They will take laws that um, deal with private domestic relations, like marriage, divorce. Um, well, in Minnesota, it would be called support money and alimony in divorce situations. Now, under the red bubble there, it um, deals with public, is the parens patriae power of the state, which is the state exercising um, parental authority over children who are dependent. In other words, they're dependent on public dollars to meet their basic needs. And that those basic needs are then met by the state pursuant to this parens patriae authority. And that is a public interest, which has a different standard than laws dealing with private domestic relations, which would be, well, master servant. That's really what a marriage contract is, because a man um, proposes marriage to a woman because he cannot have a child by himself. He needs a mate for that. That is the master servant relationship. And it's our contention that in exchange for that, this is why it's so hard to explain. The marriage contract allows what the woman can do without a man, well, not without a man, but without marriage. She can have a child without marriage, and have this right to the custody of that child. Whereas a man, the only way he can have a natural right, or what we claim is now an unalienable right, to the custody of his offspring is through the marriage to the mother of that child. And it's through the marriage, okay, outside of marriage, an unwed mother would have the natural right to that custody. Through marriage, she transfers that unalienable right, which normally unalienable rights are by definition can't be transferred. It's our position that marriage creates an exception to that general rule. But she transfers that to the man through the marriage, and in exchange, she receives coverture. And coverture has been so demonized, it was one of the first things the feminists went after. Why? Because that coverture is actually a benefit to the woman. If she's guaranteed a lifetime of care and support from this man that she just gave what we have termed natural law guardian, that unalienable right to the custody of the child. It's similar to guardian by nature under the common law and guardian by nurture under the common law. It's kind of a combination of the two. Under the common law, guardian by nature only dealt with the heir apparent, the firstborn heir apparent, where a guardian for nurture applied to all the other children. But the man had was recognized as having this natural right to their custody and care and upbringing and education, religious and secular educations. And okay, where do I go from here?
So
Well,
we're talking
let
about
me jump
inalienable
in.
rights. We're also saying
Yeah,
we're talking about inalienable rights. We're also talking about
Better
nature.
at answering.
So inalienable rights is not as part of the natural law. Is kind of what you're saying.
Okay, well, there's another one of those words. The difference between inalienable and unalienable is important. The word unalienable, as used in our Declaration of Independence, is not the same as inalienable when you are talking about a man-made or a man or positive law. Um, what's an example? Well, all unalienable rights are rights that come from God exclusively. Man can't create an unalienable right. They can create inalienable rights when they pass the Constitution. Your rights under the Constitution, they're all inalienable. But whoever crafted that Constitution also has the power to uncraft it. They can abolish it. They can write a new one. Whereas an unalienable right is unchangeable. No one can change that except God himself. That's important. So when you read the way the lawyers address it, they like to use the word inalienable. There's a reason they do that, because their authority is limited to positive law, man-made law. Same at the Supreme Court level, they won't touch unalienable unless it's already enumerated in the Constitution. But once it's enumerated in the Constitution, at that point it becomes an inalienable right.
So let me see if I understand this right.
All right.
An unalienable right is my right as a father, married father, with authority over my children.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Family courts take that away. That's against what God has given me.
Correct.
An inalienable right is my right to free speech, which did not come from God. That came from the government. Would you agree, or am I getting it wrong?
No, your right to free speech is unalienable. God gives you, he gave you the power of speech.
Okay, my right to bear arms, is that inalienable?
You have a right to self-defense. God gives you that right. That's an unalienable right, but it's
But they
referred
can take
to
away my gun and restrict my usage of that.
only if you allow them. They take away your children too, and you allow that. Well, maybe you don't, but society does.
No, I did. Yeah. There's force. They will
And
use
I can,
force.
It's the fact that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights recognizes some of those rights as inalienable, but they are God given. And the fact that the parental rights were never established or enumerated as unalienable or inalienable in the Constitution is where the door was, you might say, left open for those to undermine the family and family government itself. Where Blackstone called the marriage contract sui generis, a contract like no other because of the differences of the sexes. And that was pretty well understood in maybe the 17th century, 18th century, and maybe part of the 19th century, but that kind of language. He was under attack, as you can imagine, because of his, maybe we say, biblical foundations for his common law and understanding of common law. But that slowly
Only
slipped
natural
away.
because family law was never a civil matter until like the 1500s. It
well,
was always governed by the church.
family law didn't exist
And
as a field of law until the mid 20th century. Prior to that, it was domestic
true,
relations.
but after the Reformation in Germany, up until that time, marriages were registered or recorded in the church, the Catholic
Correct.
Church. They had authority over that. And then when the Lutherans came around, we don't want Catholics controlling that. So they put the recording of marriage under the state government, which then I think that's when the body of work of common law, which my point is, common law is all derived from canon law or church law or God's law, however you want to say that. It's evolved, and then English common law was further specialization. In the U.S., law really has its roots in English common law. Do I understand things right here?
Yes. Now, uh, see, getting back to this father's right to the custody under the common law, because it was a class-based system, and the heir apparent had a higher, or the father had more control over the heir apparent. In fact, his control over the child, his firstborn, I can't remember exactly, but it's longer than the children that he has under guardian by nurture. That was up until the age 14. At that time, the children were allowed to do basically whatever they want. The heir apparent was under the father's control till at least 21, and I think in some cases it went to 24, 25. So that heir apparent wasn't independent of his father until that point. But when that system came over to America, where we're not class-based, so we didn't have an heir apparent, all children were entitled to equal inheritance.
Not true. Not true.
All right.
That's primogeniture, primary right of inheritance of the firstborn, which is biblical. That existed in the North America up until the time of the Revolution. Then in the Declaration of Independence, it just jumped out at me last week, actually, all men are created equal. That's when Thomas Jefferson, who was the eldest son and inherited the bulk of his father's estate, then he said all men are created equal. So he abolished the right of the firstborn. That's what you were talking about. The firstborn, the heir apparent, was under the authority of his father for longer. And it was always a male. And then really with the institution of the United States of America, that's when that went away. And it was probably declining. The use was declining up until that time. I'll grant you that.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's not going to disagree with that. In fact, I agree with it. I just didn't know that because I've read case law where the courts were trying to apply this guardian by nature authority in certain custody disputes, and they were having a hard time doing it because it didn't necessarily apply. And that's where the Flint case comes in, and that was in 1895.